Hey, Bo and Luke Nation. Welcome to another episode of the Bo and Luke Show. I'm your co-host, Bo Brabo.
And I'm your co-host, Luke Carignan. And today we have a treat for you. And that treat is Mary B. Lucas. Mary is an author and staffing industry executive. Mary climbed the ladder from an entry-level customer service role to a C-level executive position, most recently as the chief talent officer at Supplemental Healthcare. In 2006, Mary wrote a book called Lunch, Meat, and Life Lessons to honor the teachings, sayings, and lessons of her late father, John Bickelmeyer, that he instilled on her. Mary's dad, John, started Bickelmeyer Meats in Kansas City in 1946. In this episode, Mary talks a lot about not only her relationship with her father, but how his lessons have touched people in her family and now also teach folks like us lessons. I especially realized after editing the episode how special this is after speaking with Mary, that these life lessons can help, well, anybody. So no matter what industry or stage of life you're in, we could all use a little butcher's wisdom to help understand life and navigate through us. And as always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you consume your podcasts. Check us out on Facebook, theboandlukeshow.com. Leave us comments. We only grow if you help us out. And without further ado, here's the butcher's daughter herself. Mary, thanks so much for joining the Bo and Luke Show. It's great to have you.
I'm so happy to be here.
So, folks, as we mentioned in the intro, Mary is the author of Lunch, Meat, and Life Lessons, which is a book that I've read a couple times. Mary, thanks so much for being here. Get us started. Tell us a little bit just about yourself before we jump in.
Well, I like to describe myself as an author, speaker, people connector, and coach. And I think it's so cool to have author. No, I say I am an accidental author, but I lead with it because I'm an intentional communicator. So as you mentioned, I wrote a book called Lunch, Meat, and Life Lessons, and probably your listeners are thinking, what the heck? Why would anyone call a book Lunch, Meat, and Life Lessons? But I say I'm an accidental author because I never intended it for the book I wrote to go outside of my family. My father was a butcher by trade. His name was John Bickelmeyer in Kansas City, Kansas, where I live on the Kansas side. And my family's business, my father's business, is still in existence, Bickelmeyer Meat Company. If you Google it, you can read all about how their business is booming during the pandemic right now. And so my father started that business years ago, and he was a guy with an 8th grade education. And yet he was the smartest man I ever knew. He was number 3 of 10 children. And when his mother passed away at the age of 42 and all these little kids behind him, it was during the Depression, he had to leave school and go into Kansas City and work in the meat industry. And he started his own meat market a few years after he was married and had kids of his own, and he didn't have to support his brothers and sisters. And an unbelievably successful entrepreneur, but I think a more successful individual and human being because he was so beloved in our community. So when he passed away at the age of 88, being number 9 of 10 children myself, I was, I think, even more grief-stricken than some of my other brothers and sisters because I knew that my children would never know him. I had 2 boys, Chase and Nick. I have 2 boys. And the good news about being number 9 of 10 children is that your parents are really tired when you're growing up, and got away with murder. I did. Anything I wanted to do, they pretty much just loved me. You know, they did track every movement. But the sad part is that when your parents are gone, your children will never know them the way maybe some of the other grandchildren would. Mm-hmm. I think that was part of my grief and the year he passed away, because my mom was already gone and they didn't really even know her. So I started writing this book, and I called it Lunch, Meat, and Life Lessons because that's what my niece Amanda would always say. Whenever she was sad or down in the dumps, she'd go see Grandpa. She'd sit at the butcher block table. He'd always have a long stick of salami. He'd slice it real thin with bread. And he'd have always have the beer ready to go. And you'd have a beer and a lunch meat sandwich or a salami sandwich. And he'd dish out food for thought and inspiration. And so I wanted my boys to know that. So I wrote Lunch, Meat, and Life Lessons. And it started the day I got my first job in the staffing industry, or the people business, as my dad called it. And that was 4 years ago, this month. And during my career. While he was alive, he was the greatest coach and advisor and inspiration for me. And he taught me how to succeed in the people business. And I really believe that, and that's why I say the book is by Mary B. Lucas, BD. I don't have my PhD. My baby sister does. She's Dr. Barbara McCormick, but I've got the BD, and I'm the butcher's daughter, and I think that's the greatest education I ever got.
I couldn't agree more. And it's amazing how many people your father's lessons are still touching.
Yes.
When you wrote this, did you have any idea that it would touch this many people out there?
No idea. And I love, as we were prepping for this call, Luke, you just rattled off like 5 of what I call the butcher's wisdom. And you said you live by them. I can't believe how many people do the same thing you do. And I mean, I wrote the book and I still go back to it. I reference in my mind, I'll do that self-talk, find the like, over the L, don't forget the comeback sauce, or, first hunk of meat you sell is yourself. And some of these don't mean anything to some of you listening right now. Yet I think every little bit of it, like raise your hand, put it down, and get back to playing the game. My favorite, I think, of all is, if you don't have a happy birthday, it's your own damn fault.
I love that. I love that.
You always celebrate every chance you get. No happy but yourself. But I mean, they roll over in my mind when I'm thinking about a situation. Like Over the L was an example where, he basically his response to put things in perspective. Good luck, bad luck, who knows? And waiting. People get so worked up about these long lines. It's over the L. Chill, let it go. Don't sweat the small stuff. There aren't very many things that I share in the book that somebody who reads it doesn't think, oh, that reminds me of this, or what my grandma used to say, or it reminds me of, like, a lot of the same principles I think you find in Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, which I love. Yep. Or Hyla Bracey's Managing from the Heart, which I think I took that book to heart when I was young in my career. And all of those, I think, are fantastic books. And yet I think the reason why The Butcher's Wisdom, my father's wisdom, resonates so much with people is because it's so simple. Mm-hmm. There's no charts and there's no graphs and it's just 8th grade English. And the guy tells a story to explain what he means by make a lasting impression. And his way of saying it was, you pour the comeback sauce on everybody you come in contact with, leave a lasting impression, make sure they're going to remember you later. And if you don't think you did it, go back and make sure you follow up and do it, because that's how you're going to be memorable. That's how you're going to make meaningful connections. And so all of that wisdom, I think for me, my family loves it. Of course, my family is so proud because they love that my father's legacy is kept alive, because he loved sharing his wisdom. And I think I'm constantly, I think, humbled by the fact that people like you guys will quote my dad. And the epitaph on his tombstone is, to live in hearts we leave behind is not to die.
Wow.
We leave behind is not to die. And for me, he's living on through people like you guys that want to keep him alive.
That's so amazing. And tell listeners a little bit more, what is the comeback sauce for someone that's just tuning in?
Okay, so I'll tell you the story. So you'll go back, and I think you almost have to visualize. So have you ever seen the movie Up?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, you know the movie Up, and that little guy with his, he's got his suspenders on and the balloons, and he's goes across the world to the Great Falls. And that little guy always had that Greek fisherman's cap on. My dad always wore that, but he called it German fisherman's cap. And if you look at the back of the book, or you Google John Bickelmeyer comeback sauce, there'll even be a video of him. I have a video of my dad talking about comeback sauce. But you visualize, I'm 22 years old, I'm right out of college. Now think, if we're going to make a movie of Lunch, Meat, and Life Lessons, Ed Asner, who's the voice of that guy, he plays my dad, and Kim Diaz plays me. I just think that would be awesome. So you're sitting across. So I get a phone call, and I get this job. I'm a recruiter. I'm going to be a recruiter for a company called Audia Personnel Services. I'm a college graduate, first generation college graduate. Dad, butcher, 8th grade education. Mom, high school education, stay-at-home mom with 10 kids. And I get this phone call, and they offered me a job in the staffing industry. And I am so full of myself. And I hang up the phone, and I say, I got the job. And I'm screaming, I got the job. And my dad was sitting at the butcher block table. That's where he held court, And he's sitting there, and he says, you got that job you wanted? You're going into the people business? And I looked at him and I rolled my eyes, 22 years old and completely full of myself. And I look at him and I say, no, Dad, I'm going into the staffing industry. And he just looks at me and he goes, get out of your own way, girl. You're going into the people business. You don't find meaningful ways to make connections with the people around you, one person at a time, you will not be successful. I don't care what you do for a living, but you're a candlestick maker. You're in the people business. I'm in the people business. I help people put food on their tables. Your mom is in the people business. She's helping raise good, upstanding young people. You're in the people business. You're going to find people work and companies people. Don't overcomplicate it. Mm-hmm. Remember, that was that moment that my relationship changed with my dad. And I remember thinking, maybe I should get out of my own way and listen to him because he was unbelievably successful. Mm-hmm. He actually did very well. But as I said, he was a beloved member of our community and an incredible father. So I remember I said, okay, what do you want to tell me, Dad? What do you want to tell me that's going to help me succeed in the people business? You've done pretty well for yourself. I probably ought to listen to you. Grab a salami sandwich, lay it on me, Dad. And he looks at me and he said, don't forget the comeback sauce. I said, what do you mean? He said, Mary, you want to make a lasting impression. Don't forget the comeback sauce. You pour the comeback sauce on everybody you come in contact with and you'll do just fine. And I said, Dad, I want to be with you here, but that is so cheesy. Comeback sauce on? What do you mean by that? Where did you come up with that? And he said, I remember it like it was yesterday. He said, I was really afraid. I had 5 mouths to feed, 3 kids and your mom and me. And I finally stopped helping send money home to raise my brothers and sisters. And I wanted to open my own business. And I'd worked with Mr. Snow for years. He was my boss. He had his own meat market. And I knew I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to open my own meat market. I took my life savings, everything I had, and I put it into Bicklemeyer Meats, Johnny's Market, 7th Street in Cheyenne, right down by the river. And I opened the market. And I took 2 guys with me from Mr. Snow's. And I thought, okay, here we go. We're going. And I'm feeling pretty good about the way things are going. And then one morning I come in and the 2 guys that were working with me were standing at the cash register and they're waiting for me to, come in. And they go, Johnny, we're in trouble. Johnny, this is bad. Johnny, we're in trouble. And I said, Dad said, well, what do you mean we're in trouble? And I go, we are in so much trouble. We were at Sammy's bar last night and Mr. Snow says he has a plan to put us out of business. And he said, what do you mean he has a plan to put us out of business? And Dad said, they said that every time you advertise a price per pound, they're going to advertise 10 cents per pound cheaper until you can't afford to be in business any longer. And Dad said he looked at him and they said, Johnny, they said he said he'd take us back. He said he'd take us back. He'd let us out, but when you go under, but this is bad, Johnny. We came here to be a part of your business, to help you grow this business. And what are we going to do now? And Dad said, I couldn't help it. I just started laughing and I'm laughing and they're going, this isn't funny, Johnny. This is bad. This is bad. And Dad goes, oh my gosh, you guys, it's hilarious. Their plan won't work. We don't have any money to advertise.
So nobody's going to know how much his meat costs, right?
Yeah, he said, no, nobody. He said, all we got is the quality of the product we sell. We have the roof over our heads and what little we pay ourselves. And he said, I thought about it just then. He goes, wait a minute. We got comeback sauce. You pour the comeback sauce on everybody who you come in contact with and we'll do just fine. And they said, what do you mean comeback sauce? And Dad said, I don't know. You figure it out. And all these leadership books says empower people, trust your people, empower your people. He goes, what do you mean comeback sauce, Johnny? What do you mean by that? And he goes, I don't know. You figure it out. You'll know. Do you think they had an experience with you that's going to make them want to come back? And if you do, and if you think you've done a good enough job, then fine. Let them come over to the cash register and I'll bring them out and I'll pour a little comeback sauce on them too. If you don't, you keep working at it until you do. And that's how we're going to grow our business. And I'll never forget what he said. This was really what really resonated with me and how it clicked with me was what he said. Then he said, the guy said, Johnny, give us an example. And he goes, all right, I'll give you an example. Perfect example. This morning when we were in here talking, first customer of the day comes in. The bell rings over the door. You looked up. You're talking to me. What are we going to do, Johnny? What are we going to do? And you were so distracted. Customer comes in. You said, you knew you were the one to take care of the first customer. You look up and you go, good morning. Come on over here behind the meat counter. How can I help you today? And he said, let me replay exactly what I heard. And then I'm going to replay it again with comeback sauce. You look up, good morning, come on over here. How can I help you? What can I do for you today? I'd like a pound of ground beef, please. Coming right up. How you doing today? Oh, not so great. My wife and baby are sick. They've been sick all weekend. My wife finally has her appetite back. She wants spaghetti ready for dinner tonight. So I came in to get a pound of ground beef. I'm going to make that up for her. Well, good for you. There you go. There's your pound of ground beef. Thank you so much for coming in. Johnny will cash you out. Go right around the corner at the cash register. Thanks for coming in. Fine interaction. Wasn't any comeback sauce on it. What would you have done differently, Johnny? He said. He goes, well, let's replay the conversation and let's do the whole interaction over again and pour a little comeback sauce. And so he said, let's see. The door opens up. You're standing up there nagging at me by the cash register. The door opens up. The bell rings over the door. You look up. You know your first step to take care of the first customer that comes in. You take a deep breath. You stop what you're doing. You clear your head. You open your heart. And you get ready to make a connection. You walk behind the glass meat counter and you look over and you say, good morning, first customer of the day. You win the award. Come on over here. How can I help you? I'd like a pound of ground beef, please. Coming right up. How you doing today? Oh, not so great. My wife and baby are sick. Been sick all weekend. My wife finally has her appetite back. She wants spaghetti ready for dinner, so I came in to get a pound of ground beef to make that up for her. You stop what you are doing the moment he gave you a little of himself and you give yourself back. Don't you ever ask a throw off question like how you doing today. And when the person across from you is generous enough to give you a response, you respond. You stop what you're doing. You put that pound of ground beef that you've already measured off to the side. You look up over the counter. You say, I'm sorry your wife and baby are sick. Good for you for taking such good care of them. I'm proud to be the person to take care of you today. You wanted a pound of ground beef, right? Yep. Well, I'm going to give you a little extra. Reach in the cooler, get a little extra, top it off, wrap it up, and as big as you can on top of that package, you write 1 pound. He knows, and you know you gave him a little extra. You hand that pound of ground beef over to him, and you say, there you go. There's your pound of ground beef. Gave you a little extra. You deserve it. You're taking such good care of your family. I'm proud to take care of you again. So go on around the corner. Johnny will cash you out. Just pay for a pound. Thank you so much for coming in.
Wow.
Well, Luke, do you think that second interaction was a little different than the first?
Oh, good. Night and day. Night and day.
Did it take a lot longer?
No.
And so what of that story resonated with you? What part of that story made you think, okay, comeback sauce, that's the ticket?
To me, it's the sincerity of the interaction. Not going through the motions. I think it's the sincerity of interacting with people and getting them to come back because they have that human connection with you that people are willing to pay for nowadays. Yeah. And, in the economy we're at now, I think, experience is pretty much the new currency that we're dealing with today. And I think, he hit it on the head with that.
Yeah. I think for me, when I heard that story the first time, I am so bad, or I try not to be, but it's so hard. We're moving so fast. When he said, don't you ever ask a throw off question. How many times do you see people walk by you? How you doing today? How's your day going? What's going on? And then they buzz on right by, staring at their phones. Don't wait for her. And I just think for me, it hit home so much when he said, if someone's generous enough to give a little of themselves to you, you take the time to acknowledge that and give a little of yourself back. And I loved that. I mean, I still get goosebumps thinking about it because I think it's just not the way so many people provide service these days. And I think when you do see that, it used to be, I think that there was an expectation that was so high. And now I think expectation is so low that when you get outstanding service, you recognize it. You go back. It creates that loyalty, and I think you talk a little bit about that in your book, Bo, and I think that it starts out when you look at the Army, and that starts with loyalty, and loyalty is created by interactions like that, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And I wish I would have had those words in part of my book where I even talk about respect and how to show respect. And I use the demonstration of actually, if somebody comes into your office, and you're sitting down, stand up, right? Stop what you're doing, stand up, They come in, you can interact with them, and you can make I should have used the words because they're perfect. Should use your dad's word. It's making a connection. Not only you're showing respect. I mean, the doing that in the butcher shop, you're definitely showing respect to your customer. But it's that connection. If you want to connect with people, you have to do that.
Yeah, it's crazy. If you want to connect with people, you got to connect with people.
You got to connect with people.
Yeah.
And I think out of everything so far, because it's so powerful, what your dad showed, which is there's just so much of it missing in society. There is a monster difference between wisdom and intelligence, right? And wisdom can come from anyone, anywhere, in any place, and you just never know where that's going to come from, And I think that people, in my experience, some of the people are just so intelligent, and they've got, all the degrees, they've got all of the PhDs and all of that behind them, can be seriously lacking in wisdom, and it can. Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I don't want to offend anybody.
And I what I like, especially my coaching practice, what I like to talk about is I agree with you. Wisdom. It's also emotional intelligence. I mean, my dad was wise, and I talk about the butcher's wisdom, and I think he was, he would tell you, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, 8th grade education, yet he was, I think, in so many ways, because of how emotionally intelligent he was. And so I so many times will coach people and work with people around that, the emotional intelligence is, there are many people that may not have the highest IQ, but they have the highest EQ and the emotional equivalent quotient. And those are the people that people want to follow. And those are the people that people want to work for. And they want to go to work in organizations that value emotional intelligence. And I think they stay there. So, my world in talent engagement and retention, that is so paramount to getting people to be part of a mission that they feel, and a vision that they feel like they can really contribute to, but it has to tug at that emotional intelligence, at their heartstrings. They want to feel like they're part of a movement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Mary, and listeners, there's no excuse to not pick up this book. By the way, it is just action packed with life, in the title, life lessons. But let me give you like a little taste here. So, taste of the lunch meat, I guess that's it. But here's what I love about it. Number one, quick, easy read. It's not a book that like is a commitment to dive into, or that you have to dig through chapter by chapter to get the main points. Mary drops knowledge bombs all throughout the book very quickly. You can listen to it on audiobook, and I promise you every 15 minutes you'll grab little tidbits in here. But what makes Mary really stand out as an author, and I want to touch on where you developed this skill, Mary, our listeners just got a taste of it, is your ability to tell stories while you embed the lesson. Like, I've seen a lot of books out there where people are, they're good books, they're okay with sharing lessons, but they don't resonate with people, and they're not memorable. A lesson is not useful unless you can remember it, right? And I think what you could just put on a master class for is storytelling. Where did you get that skill? Because it's awesome.
Well, thank you for that. And I think I would say I'm my father's daughter on that as well. I mean, he taught through stories and examples. And I think at his knee from an early age, I think we all we were, no pun intended, but we were all just hungry for time with him because there were so many of us. I mean, there were 10 of us. We said our prayers at night. We'd say, God bless Joan, Judy, Johnny, Jimmy, Joey, Jared, Jeannie, Jane, Mary, and Barbara. And so 10 of us, all J's, still got to me. I was named after my mom. But not only were there all the kids, but right next door, my oldest sister, Joan, who was old enough to be my mother, I have a nephew who's 9 months younger than me. My little sister Barbie was an aunt the moment she was born. So there were also 5 kids in 5 years at Joan and Lou's house lived next door. So when you had a chance to listen to him, and my mom, bless her heart, she was an only child who had 10 children and did not like the spotlight on her. And she really loved the spotlight on her husband and her children. And so I said I could have written a book about her called Laundry and Life Lessons. That one-on-one individual time when I was folding towels, safe haven, warm mother's love. That's when I would get some of the greatest advice and counsel from her. Yet Dad liked to hold court. So I think I got a master class on storytelling from the expert storyteller, because he would always say, there's even so many things that aren't in the book, but he would tell a story and you just sit there and listen. And all of us at his knee would just sit and listen to the story. And I think part of it was really all but real life, this is what he said. But he would never talk about and then he said this and she said this. He'd just talk in their voice, kind of like what I told the comeback sauce story. What do you mean, Johnny? What do you mean about comeback sauce? Give us an example. And he would just tell in their, and so you were so much their voice, and you were so much more, I think, engaged and involved because you felt like you were there in the moment. And he would always paint a picture for us. Like when I painted the picture of, think about Ed Asner and that voice of, in the movie Up. Then you have a visual. You're playing a little movie in your mind. And then, of course, I love, your listeners can't see me, so just picture me as Cameron Diaz, right?
I see the resemblance. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, well, yeah. Thanks for that. I'm a lot older, but I think that to me, I learned that if you paint a picture and then you bring the people into the story, you remember it more and you feel like you're a part of it. And I think, and it's just a lot more enjoyable to tell a story like that too, I think.
Well, you're great at it. You're absolutely great at it. I felt like I was in the moment the entire book, which makes it easy to remember. And then I can use it every single day, which makes it super impactful,
Yeah. And we've talked about that before, Luke, on our show where, you get your life lesson book, professional book, whatever the case might be, when it's the book that sits on your desk and you have weights holding it down and it's something that you reference, that's a book. That is, and that's what this book is. I think it's fantastic because you just keep it there, and it's the best reference possible, right? Keeps you motivated and inspired, and it's awesome.
I think one of the greatest compliments I got was when I was publishing. Well, and it started at Kinko's before it was FedEx office. When I wrote it, I have so many people in my family. Everybody has some talent. So one niece does graphic design work, and she made a cute little cover, like a checkerboard cover, like this checkerboard tablecloths, and real looking lunch meat and life lessons. And we had it spiral bound at Kinko's, $57 a color copy. And I never intended for it to be the real life book version is now. I thought, this is fun. It'll, I got 10 copies, $57 a color copy, not a small investment. And I got 10 for my 8 living brothers and sisters. And then I got one for my son Chase and one for my son Nick. And I thought, it starts the day I graduated from K-State in 1980, and I got my job in the people business, and it ends on my father's last day. And so I thought, well, I'll give it to Chase and Nick when they graduate from college. They don't care about it now, but I want them to know what their grandpa advice he'd give them in the workplace and what life lessons he would share with them. So then I had a birthday party. I told you one of my favorite lessons from my dad is if you don't have a happy birthday, it's your own damn fault. Take that part. And so I had a birthday party for him on what would have been his 90th birthday. He was 88 years old when he passed. And so 2 years kind of I wrote and, different. It's funny. I wrote the first chapter the day I got my job. And then I wrote the last chapter his last day, and the bicycle began his last day. And then over the course of 2 years, I filled in all the blanks in between as I thought of something and remembered, this is what he would say when I have a customer I don't like, or this is what he would say and I remember things he shared with me. So I have the book, and it's this cute little Kinko's spiral bound version. And then I gave it to everybody. And then all of a sudden it's getting passed around all over Kansas City. And my husband, Scott, he couldn't have been prouder. And he's handing it out to people to read it. And Dave Lockton, the CEO of the Lockton Companies at that time, and it's the largest privately held insurance company in the world. It's based in Kansas. So my husband was in the locker room after a round of golf. Dave Lockton's there, and he had a copy of the book they'd given his brother to read. His brother gave it back, and Dave says, what is that? And he said, it's a book Mary wrote. My wife Mary wrote about her father. And he says, I knew John Bicklemeyer. I'm Bicklemeyer Mace, because I'd love to read it. Well, my husband never asked me if he could share with anyone outside our family. So a couple days later, I get a phone call from Dave Lockton. I get the phone. It's Mary. He said, Dave Lockton here. I just read your book, Lunch, Meat, and Life Lessons. I'd like to order 500 copies.
What?
I said, pardon? Because we just had the largest acquisition in our company's history. I'm going to have a meeting of all my producers at the Broadmoor in Colorado. I want everybody to know your father's wisdom because we didn't get as big as we are right now because we acted like we were a big company. We got as big as we are right now because we made connections, one connection at a time, meaningful connections, just like your father taught you. I want all my producers, code word for salespeople, to read this book. And I said, it's $57 a color copy at Kinko's. He goes, never mind. You need to get in a cheaper version. So that's when I went to this company called Arbor Books. And I thought, I think I might be on to something if people want to buy mass quantities like that. And
Yeah.
that was the beginning of it. And so I got, I ordered the first 1,000. Think I'd end up with, 400 or 500 in my basement. And they were all gone in 2 weeks. And now over 70,000 copies later, it seems to resonate. People are just hungry for it, I think. And it's like you guys said, it's so simple. It's a max 2.5 hour read. It's a plane ride read, a lot of people say. And
Yeah.
so I'll get phone calls from people like, one time I picked up the phone and I said, good afternoon, this is Mary Lucas. And I hear this, this is Mary Lucas, the author. I said, yes. He goes, you answer your own phone? I said, yeah, it's my phone. He said, I just read your book on a cross-country flight. I just landed from Atlanta to LAX. I'm sitting baggage claim in LAX crying my head off. You need to put a disclaimer on that book. Do not read on cross-country flights. You will bother the passengers around you. Because
Wow.
The last story in the book is Inspire Yourself. And it's pretty emotional. And I think I just can't get over how many people have fallen in love with my father from, minute one, and then 2.5 hours later, they're crying at the morning of his passing. And
Yeah.
I just can't even imagine a better gift for his legacy that people fall in love with him in 2.5 hours. And honestly, if you met him live when he was alive, you would have fallen in love with him in 2.5 minutes, I think. But I'm so proud of that. I love that so much.
I know we
that's
would.
fantastic.
We definitely would.
Mary, was there anybody, did your father ever mention, was there anybody in his life like that he learned this stuff from that taught him, or was it just through his own experience?
He loved the Dale Carnegie. He loved how to win friends and influence people.
Uh-huh.
And I am lucky enough that I inherited that copy, and it's so threadbare. And it's so, he would say, this is the book you all need to read. And we all had to read it. And he would reference that book a lot. And I think for him that, I don't know how and when he got it but I think that was an important book to him. And then I do think because he was told and I don't talk about this in the book, but when he was a very young man, he had a lung collapse. He couldn't get into the military. He was declined chance. He was a long, lanky guy in those days. And he had problems with his lung, and he was told that he could never buy life insurance. He would never be approved for it. He couldn't get into the military, which he wanted to serve his country, and they wouldn't allow that. So he was told by an actuary, is that what you say?
Yeah.
He wouldn't live much past 35 or 40. And so I think when you are given, like what he said, I was given a death sentence, and I'd say go make the most out of every moment, live to the fullest. And, obviously he said, I outlived everybody who told me I couldn't buy life insurance and gave me that, past at 88. And so I think that was also part of why he was who he was, because he didn't believe he had a long time on this, long life on this earth.
Yeah. That's incredible. And that's a great lesson for all of our listeners. And that, our whole mission here is to inspire others to go after their dreams and never quit. And you have to take that into consideration that, give it every day that you're given, give it all you got. And just go after it. I love that.
I couldn't agree more. And that was the last lesson he taught me. You just quoted him, not realizing you did probably, but the story of his last day. And I think what does brings tears to so many people's eyes is I found myself alone with him during the final hours of his life. And I, it was so crazy because as big as my family is, there was a lot going on. My sister was ill at the time, and my family was all scattered. And my baby sister, Barbie, Dr. Barbara Bickelmeyer, she's the one who said, go stay with Dad. She said, it was Christmas week. She said, they say, he doesn't have very long to live, congestive heart failure. He wants to get home and die in front of the fireplace. So I'm trying to get a bed with from hospice. And so she was, and I went into his room and I sat there and I was the only one in there, and all the nurses had left and they'd all been flirting with him. And he was, just pouring comeback sauce on all the nurses. And
yeah.
I walk in and they go, "Oh, you're Mary. I heard about you. And your dad's a hoot." And they'd taken all the wires off of him. So he didn't look like he was ill to me, except he was so unusually quiet. And he was such a burly guy, and I remember sitting down across from him and I was kind of squirming because it was just such a surreal thing, and my mom had already passed years before. And as I mentioned, my sister was ill at the same time. And I'm just sitting there, and my dad looks over at me, and his voice was so soft and it was unusual. He looks over and he goes, "You look so uncomfortable." And I remember sitting across the room from him, and he's looking at me. He goes, "You look so uncomfortable." And I think, "You're worried about me?" And then he said, "Okay," he kind of takes his hand and he pats his shoulder and he goes, "Come on, climb on up here. You can snuggle with me. These nurses won't care. They love me. Come on. You can sit with me while we wait. Barb's getting a bed so I can go home." And I climbed up into the hospital bed with him, and it was just put up a little bit, so his back was up a little bit. And I remember leaning my face against his chest, right by his shoulder.
Yeah.
And just in the crook of his arm, and I lost it. I just started to cry. And I remember thinking, I won't have this moment. I'm crying. Mm-hmm. He can hear it and he can feel it. I'm sobbing. He looks down at me and he says, once again, his voice so soft. I think that's what melted my heart. He said, "Mary, are you okay?" And I looked up at him and I'm crying. I said, "No, Dad, I'm not. Are you okay?" And I'm crying. He says, "Yes." And I'll never forget what he said. I hope we all say this at the end of our lives. I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yes. I'm proud of who I am and what I've done. I like what I see in the mirror. If this is how it ends for me, this is how it ends for me. I'm okay with this, Mary." And I look up at him and I'm crying because it's always all about me. And I go, "Good for you." And I'm crying, "Good for you, Dad. I'm so happy for you. I'm glad you're okay with this. I'm not. Where am I going to go now? Who's going to inspire me now? What am I going to do now, Dad?" But he just looks down at me and he said, "Oh, Mary, that's so easy. Your mother and I have taught you well. Inspire yourself. You'll figure it out. Inspire yourself." That's
wow.
what I did. We got
awesome.
Him died the following morning, 8:37 a.m. And the last thing he said to me when we were one-on-one was, "Inspire yourself. You'll figure it out." And I did. I wrote life lessons and I inspired myself when I wrote it. And every time I talk to people like you, I inspire myself again. And it keeps his legacy alive. The epitaph, "To hearts we leave behind means not to die." And he lives on. And every time I share his wisdom, I get inspired. So again, you guys gave me a gift today, because my husband always tells me whenever I get cranky down the dumps, he goes, "Go do a speech or go talk about your book. You're going to be much nicer afterwards." It'll be a good weekend because I'm reminded to inspire myself.
Wow. That's awesome.
It'll be a good weekend for us too, Mary. I can't tell you how much not only us, but our listeners really appreciate you just pouring your heart out there for everybody else to listen to. And I feel like other people have those emotions. They just don't know how to share them, Mm-hmm. And it's just so helpful, the way you put it into perspective and the lessons that you've learned to share and, I don't know, to inspire us. I'm feeling inspired right now. Bo and I might cry on this show right now.
That's very possible.
Will I be the first person who's made you cry on your podcast?
Yes.
Yeah, it would be first. Yes.
Yeah, that would definitely be a first.
Yeah.
That would absolutely be a first.
Yeah. So I thank you for being, writing books like these. You have to be vulnerable and put yourself out there and especially talk about it, speak about it and so forth. I'm incredibly grateful that you do that, because it does inspire and inspires many. I'm sure you're touching the hearts and minds of tens of thousands of people. You'll never know who they are or just how deep you've done that, but rest assured you have,
Yeah.
for sure.
Thank you, guys.
Mary, I have a question. After the passing of your father, in the years, and I know that was some time ago, but what in your life has become more important and less important to you after that happened?
I will say that I am far more, and maybe that isn't just my father's passing, but maybe it's also my own coming of age. I am far more selective about how and where and with who I spend my time. Is it with who or whom? I never say that right. I just am very, I just, I see so often because, when you're from a family as big as mine, loss is part of that, and unfortunately I've seen a lot of loss. And I think friends, even my age, just turned 62. And I think I'm surprised by where I am in terms of my age, that I see people that I love and care about that are battling with things, illness, and I just think why I am relatively young and healthy. And I think I want to be very selective, that I only want to do the kind of work I want to do and with the people I want to work with. And that's not to say that there isn't incredible work to be done. It's just, I feel like after 40 years in the staffing industry, that is my time to now say coaching, advisory work, consulting, and giving back is in a different way, where maybe it's not as much about the money and the rise. And I mean, I was, don't get me wrong, super competitive, always wanted to be, if I was recruiting a top producer, or my office had to be the number one office, or I wanted to be, the region, as I grew up in staffing, those were all very important to me at the time. And I think a lot of people get there faster than I get there. I just think right now, meaningful work and meaningful connections and being a little bit more, not say yes to everything. I think that's way more important to me than it's ever been. And I think that my quality of life is so much better when I live that way, because it's just, I don't look back and say, oh, why did I do that today? I just try to think with a very mindful plan ahead. Is that really how I want to spend my time? And so I think that's been a big difference for me. And it took me a long time to get there, but I'm closer than I've ever been, and I still have work to do. I think we're always all a work in progress. And I think I'm starting back to school. I hope to finish my master's. And I think I take my first class starting June 23rd. But I think living a life of intent with a lifelong learner. I remember hearing my godson, Joey Cordes, when he graduated from Carnegie Mellon, there was a speaker there, and she talked about being a polymath. And I'd never heard that word before, but I remember it's basically a lifelong learner, a person of great and varied learning. And I remember her telling the story as a young graduation speaker. She said she'd go to the library and she'd see these 80-something-year-old guys and gals in there, and how that inspired her. And I think, I want to be that person. So I'm still about 20 years away, but I want to be a person that continues to be a lifelong learner and is always looking at how do I continue to just take what's out there that might not be something. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm not a good cook, and over the pandemic, and I've been learning to cook thanks to HelloFresh. I could be their commercial. And I thought, I'm making stuff that I never made before. My boys wish, Mom, I wish they would have had that when I was growing up, because I think that's so fun to try those new things like that, and really, always have new experiences.
Yeah, that's great. That's one thing the last few months have done well for us too. Is back to the kitchen and back to the cooking.
It's not good for my waistline, but I sure am enjoying it.
Yeah, there you go.
It puts everything in perspective. I mean, one thing that the pandemic has done, like, it's really polarized a lot of the people in the workspace today. And what I mean by that is you look, a lot of people have lost their jobs. It's completely terrible, right? But you look at the other end of the spectrum, the people that are keeping their jobs. What I'm seeing right now is they're working twice as hard as they ever did just to keep those. And now they're making other sacrifices outside of work just to tread water and make sure that their name isn't on that list or the chopping block moving forward. And I think we're losing a lot in the pandemic, just in interaction with people, just remembering the important stuff, the small stuff out there in life, on both sides of the equation. And it's just, for listeners out there, if you're feeling that, I mean, it's so important to like listen to what Mary's saying right now and just be mindful and cognizant of what is happening around you and bring yourself back to that center and not let yourself get sucked in any direction to where, you're doing things that you don't want to do. Mary, what you said resonated really. There's a new Garth Brooks documentary on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. You'll cry your eyes out. He's a crier. It's a great documentary. But he says in there, at this point in my life, when somebody asks me to do something, if my answer isn't hell yes, then I don't do it.
That's a great quote. And I that's a great quote. I might have to steal that from Garth. I think too, when you were talking, it's just what made me really think about, resonated with me was how my dad would always say when I would get overwhelmed, in that whelmed state, I'd get all worked up and my problems are the biggest things in the world. They're so much more important than anybody else's problems. And I'd be going and I just remember he'd always kind of bring me back to center and he'd say, everybody has stuff coming at them. Everybody does. Everybody has stuff coming at them. The difference between you and everybody else is who. Who. You can let stuff get to you or you cannot. And he would say, the only way you can change how you view the world is to change how you view the world. You either let it get to you or you don't. You choose, and you're going to be a lot more enjoyable to be around, and you're going to get through it a lot easier and with less stress if you just don't make such a big deal out of things that you think are a big deal, because in the end, they really aren't. And I just think that was so, everybody thinks the world revolves around them. And of course it is. You take stuff in on how it affects you, no matter what it is, and your listeners right now. And yet at the same time, when you realize there's a whole world that's beyond you, that, how are you contributing to that? And how I think that's just, it's a hard lesson to learn. And when you get it, and again, it's hard. I mean, honestly, you don't ever always get it. It's just when you can respond in that way to things, it's just everybody around you so much happier. But most important, you are so much happier.
Oh, well said. Well said.
Very well said.
So what's I know you mentioned you're getting your master's, which is awesome. It's incredible. What's the next limb you're grabbing onto? Or is there a limb, or are you just gonna swing out there for a little bit?
Well, for those that don't know what you're referring to, Dad would always say, don't let go of one limb till you have a firm hold on another. And I think at this point in my life, I figure out I'm not trying to climb anymore. I want to feel the ground at my feet. I want to feel the sun on my face. And I think I have a few goals, and one is to get to all 50 states by, I say 50 by 30. So by 2030, I want to be off. So my sister's celebrating her 60th birthday this year, so we're going to Fairbanks, Alaska. It's $363 round trip from Kansas City to Fairbanks on Alaska Air. So we booked an igloo number 9 because I'm number 9, and we'll see the Northern Lights.
Wow.
And then I do start my class. It'll take me a while, a couple of years, and I wish me luck because I'm really concerned about the APA writing style because I'm not very good at that. But I hope to finish my master's in organizational development just because that's a goal. That's on my bucket list to have that. And then who knows, I may teach down the road. I really have had some great meetings since I left supplemental healthcare the end of just 2 weeks ago. And when I put my post out on LinkedIn, Bo, you saw that, or saw it, yep. I think, and that was where you invited me because my post was new chapter. And I said, the doors are open for advisory board work, coaching, consulting. And I really had some great meetings already with people that said, I've been waiting for you to to do this now. So I'm looking for a coach for a team member or someone else in an executive coaching role. So I really don't know. I mean, I think I'm going to enjoy the ride first and foremost, and then start knocking things off of my bucket list. And really, for me, I've always traveled so much, and I love traveling. I have a newfound love of home because I haven't been able to travel. So, I think being around here makes me hungry to be around here more. It's a beautiful place, Kansas City. If you haven't been a chance to spend much time here, it's a beautiful place to be. And so I hope to be around here a little bit more too.
That's awesome. That's so
Super.
good. That's so good. Well, I just wanted to say this before we get into like how people can get a hold of you for opportunities and where they can buy your book. I just want to say, your dad lives every day still through you, and you can tell, and you're passing those lessons out to other people. He lives every day through the woman we're talking to right now. So, I hope you know that. I hope you know that. How can people get a hold of you? How can they get a hold of you? Where can they get your book?
Super easy. And it's Mary B. Lucas. So in terms of Amazon, or if you want a signed hardcover copy, just connect with me. Emails mary@maryblucas.com. Super easy. mary@maryblucas.com. Websites www.maryblucas.com. There's a Facebook group. I'm pretty engaged, involved. I'm not always as good on LinkedIn, although that's been a great resource for me. But again, I'm an open book. And so if you want to connect with me on email, that you know how to reach me, or you can see video snippets of some of the speeches or my TEDx talk. And that's really, really focused more on the comeback sauce story. But it's had, quite a few more views most recently as people are starting to hear more about the book. But I think Audibles has the book. All you have to do lunch, meat, and life lessons. And once you put that in on Google, you'll find all kinds of examples. And if you really want to get a taster of my father, I was so. If I give myself a pat on the back for one thing, I think one of the things I'm so grateful for is my friend Melissa was a news anchor here in Kansas City, and I asked her while my mom and dad were both still alive. It was only about 6 months before my mom passed away. I had her come interview them one Christmas, and I gave all my brothers and sisters their stories about how they met and some stories important to them. And a little snippet, if you Google John Bickelmeyer comeback sauce, the YouTube video of him talking about comeback sauce will come up, and you can actually see him talking about that and Blinders, and I think a couple of others. So
nice.
So there's lots of ways to find me, and I love to connect with your listeners, and I hope that we reconnect. I hope that we'll all stay in touch too.
We will. We absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So Bo, do you have any more questions before we have Mary take us out?
Yeah, so I thought of this earlier, and you just mentioned it again. For your Audible, for the audio version of your book, did you record the book yourself, your voice, or a narrator?
No, it would be so weird to have a narrator, I think, and a lot more expensive. But like I told you guys, when you have a family as big as mine, there are unbelievably talented people around you. And my nephew David Wetzel has a studio in his home, and so I went and recorded in his. We had such a good time, when the file a long time ago. I mean, it was several years ago before we even got on Audible. We recorded it, and then I have a niece, Laura Wetzel, now Laura Brummer, who has this beautiful song. She is so talented. And so at the very end, right after I talk about my father's passing, her song, she has a line in it. It's called Tahoe Love. And the line is, "To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die." And so it's so beautiful at the end. And I think that came together. The production value was, the production value is priceless. The cost of doing it wasn't much at all. And it was because of all those connections. And so I think I was surprised because we were getting so many requests for an Audible version. And then Findaway Voices also has it. So different places carry it. You just had to have the file, so we uploaded it, and they accepted it. And I was super proud they did. And then now it's just it's not, you know, I would much rather hear my voice than see me on, like, when I do the videos. So
Yeah.
for me, it's like I have it on my car, and I get in a lot of times I listen to myself read it, because I think it's like I said, it's a great reminder. I mean, I wrote it and I still want to listen to it over and over again because it's a great reminder.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Bo, you got to do your book, your own voice,
Yeah.
man. You
You
definitely.
have
Yeah,
to
that's
do it.
like the next project, for sure. And that's why that's why I asked the question, right? What you thought about that. So that's important. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think, Bo, you have such a bright future and journey with what you're doing now. I think
Mhm.
I've learned from some of my mistakes along the publishing route. So I'm only a phone call away if you ever want to run anything by me, or how I
Oh,
can.
I'll take you up on that for sure.
Yeah.
I'll shoot you an email and set up a time where we can just talk about that alone,
Yeah.
because that's it's super important. And you're right. It's just the beginning, and yeah, learning from others is the way to go.
That's right.
Yep, for sure.
Well,
Good
Mary,
stuff.
at the end of every episode, we give you the opportunity to just say absolutely whatever you want to listeners. And then we end it in a consistent way. We just have you say that's a wrap. And then it's over. So this is your time just to say whatever you want. Just end it with that's a wrap.
Well, that's a wrap is, thank you. You guys both inspired me. I mean, I think from being with y'all today, and again, you can use anything you want, take anything out you want, add anything you want. But I think for me, I hope a lot of it sticks, because I think a lot of it is really what people want to hear right now. And I think that hungry for that grassroots basic butcher's wisdom, I think it feeds the soul, you know? And so when I say that's a wrap, I say it with thank you guys for having me. I enjoyed my time with both of you. I see bright futures for both of you as you continue down your journey, because of the way you've responded to me. I can see and hear in both of you this same idea about, I want to be a lifelong learner. I'm starting this podcast because my passion is to learn from others and to be a better version of myself because of all the people that I connect with. And so I think that you guys are going to continue down this path of meaningful and enjoyable connections and relationships because of the journey you've already taken so far. So where I'm concerned, that's a wrap.